I was gonna have a good cold opening or something like that, but I couldn't think of anything.
I mean, the only thing that we could actually talk about is the whole COVID situation, but I feel like that's going to take way too long.
Yeah,
and that's like a podcast in itself.
Yeah, I wanted to quickly address, though, we didn't have an episode like 2 weeks ago. Instead, we had a YouTube video that we did where we were essentially a reaction video to the Death Note movie on Netflix, to which initially Netflix like flagged it, so I had to open a dispute, which was fun. Now, it's not a great video, and I'm not going to get revenue anyway because we don't have enough subscribers or reviewers in order for me to get money off of it, but it still took me like 6 to 8 hours to make that video.
Well, it's good practice.
It is. It was just annoying that, it got flagged, and I was like, Netflix, you're not making money off this anyway, so... But that aside, one of the reasons why we didn't do a video last time was also just because didn't really feel motivated. Not video, I mean podcast. Didn't really feel too motivated. There was a lot going on, or is still going on now, that was taking up a lot of attention around us.
Yeah.
Not just with COVID, but also because of, the other stuff going on with
the whole like race and whatnot.
Yeah. And I've like tweeted and retweeted stuff, so if anybody follows me, you know where I stand on this stuff. So don't want to spend too much time on this. Just letting you know that
we support you.
Yeah.
And even if we're not completely vocal about it, we're still 100% behind you guys.
Yeah. So. There are several people doing streams right now to donate to charities for Black Lives Matter, or other charities that are associated with it, as well as transgender and LGBTQ rights. I actually today's Sunday, yesterday and today, one of the YouTubers I follow, Eyepatch was doing a charity for yesterday and today. He raised, I think...
Did he hit his goal?
He exceeded his goals, so he has raised $18,000 in between both of them. So
wow.
I think it was close to $9,000 for each charity. One for the LGBTQ.
That's awesome.
And one for... so the LGBTQ one was called the Trevor Project. The Black Lives Matter one was... I honestly can't remember. But I retweeted a lot of it, so if you're interested in donating to those charities, just go to my Twitter account. It's at Mr. Space Lion. You'll find Eyepatch Wolf's channel, and you can donate to any of those charities if you're interested. Otherwise, there's plenty of other ones. We've donated several times to several of the charities. So, it's definitely a worthy cause. We have friends that are, for both of those charities, we have friends that meet those that are in those camps, right? We have,
yeah,
and we definitely feel it. So,
yeah. So although we were not at the actual protests, we were behind the scenes and doing what we could to promote the hopeful change that needs to come.
Yes.
In the inevitable future. So
right.
Hopefully that change is sooner rather than later, because not only are we dealing with the pandemic now, but we're also dealing with protests and everything, and people just trying to get the recognition and
right. And we're not saying we don't agree with the protests. What we're saying is like that's another factor that's happening right now. We completely understand the protests. It's like 99.9% of it is like warranted. There are looters. I'm not going to go into that, but that happens on every occasion. There's someone who tries to take advantage of a situation, but for the large majority of it, it's people. And I don't want to get into it because I've been seeing it for the past couple of weeks. It makes me angry, and I don't want to put a damper on this, but yeah. Anyway, with that cheerful note, let's go right into the podcast. Okay, so formally, welcome back to the War and Love podcast.
Hi, guys.
I am your host, Mike.
And I'm Ashley.
This is our 10th episode.
Really?
It is.
Jesus.
And the theme that I will stitch in before this is now our official podcast theme. And I quickly want to shout out to Hazel, also known as @TwinkleParks on Twitter. She made this theme for us. She was really great. I just gave her some thoughts on what we kind of wanted, and she
ran with it.
Yeah, ran with it and did a really good job. And I didn't even have to check out, see how things were going. She got back to me within a couple weeks. So very happy with the theme, and this is the one we'll be using going forward. And then other than that, we still want to look at possibly doing some more videos, but those are going to be sporadic. They take a lot of time and effort to set up and coordinate, and I'm not super good at making videos. It's just more of something I do for fun. I'm not very talented at it, so but we will try and do more.
Practice makes perfect.
Yeah, true. Anyway,
for today's podcast, we're going to kind of go back to our traditional and our original format where Mike gave me a movie and I gave him a movie, and we'll go through the whole scoring system. But before we do that, let's get into the warm-up. So I know you have probably 10,000 things that you want to talk about. So what are some things that you've been doing or you've been watching or reading that you'd want to share?
Yeah, so first, a couple weeks back, I think it was either around the same time or just after the last episode dropped, Netflix put the whole Avatar series on. And I'm a big fan of the series. I haven't really rewatched it since it was initially airing. So this show aired on Nickelodeon back in 2005 to 2008.
Yeah, I remember it being on Nickelodeon.
If you are an anime fan, you will love this show because it is the most anime non-anime show. It's heavily anime inspired. The series is not episodic, so it does follow a plot.
Is it not considered anime?
No, it's not anime. It's American made. But it does have a consistent plot that it follows. So it has a story that it follows from season 1 to season 3. It's not one-off episodes. And it's got a lot of good character development and growth. And you feel as it continues on that initially it feels kind of cartoony, but as it goes on, the characters grow and it starts to become more, I don't know, they definitely push the boundaries of something that could air on Nickelodeon. And then there's a sequel series that I saw when it aired, which was The Legend of Korra. And this takes place I think 60 or 70 years after the first series. And it kind of follows I kind of like that series actually a little bit more than the original Avatar, because it pays reference to it, but it also tries to do its own thing, because the original series kind of explores that there is this giant war going on that has been going on for the past 100 years between the Fire Nation, which is a big nation of just people that are trying to conquer the world, and everyone else. And when the first episode starts, they basically nearly won the war. So, for 100 years people have just known war. And the whole series of Avatar is just kind of trying to take down that, or that country, or take down the leader, and then restore balance to everything, right? Put the world back the way where it needs to be. Now 80 years have passed when The Legend of Korra picks up, and now you're starting to see more modernized world, kind of similar to what we have now. And what's interesting is they start exploring concepts what the world is like without the Avatar, because the Avatar is just basically meant to be this like being that's meant to kind of keep the balance in the world between all different nations, all people. That's their role, right? And this series, Legend of Korra, I'm gonna rewatch it again soon, but that kind of explores their role kind of being less and less needed, right? Now that the world is starting to become like more united and everything like that, their role really isn't required as much. And so it's an interesting concept because it's like starts exploring like what would that mean? What does that mean for a world that doesn't need that? And it becomes a lot more personal of a story. Like there's a lot of shit in that show where I was like, Jesus, how was this on Nickelodeon?
Was the Legends of Korra, you said?
Yeah.
Was that on Nickelodeon
Yeah,
as
it
well?
was. But they didn't really push it hard. And eventually, like, the last, like, X number of episodes in the 4th season, the last season, weren't even aired on the network. They aired it on the internet. Which is interesting because they were exploring a lot of stuff. They were exploring, like, mental health in that series. They were exploring, like, lesbian relationships between the main character and another character. I actually picked up, and that's another thing I wanted to plug, a comic series that takes place after The Legend of Korra, which is the writers of the series wrote that comic too. And they have like a different artist. And they kind of start leaning more into those like heavy topics that they couldn't put in Nickelodeon, which I find really interesting. So Avatar starts as like a kid series. It slowly moves to like a kind of a preteen series. Korra is like more of a teen to adult series. So it's really interesting to watch them because like I was like 15 when that Avatar first came out, and when Korra came out I was like 21, 22.
Oh, so it's still fairly new.
Yeah, I think it aired in like 2012 and finished in like 2014 or 2015, Legend of Korra. So it's not that old.
So around the time that we graduated college.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It started like around the time we graduated, like a year before too. So yeah, great series. And then the only other thing I wanted to talk about was Kaguya-sama. So I talked about that in the last episode, but I've read a lot more. And I think I talked to you about this before, but this series is slowly becoming like one of my favorite manga series because like it's initially starts as a romantic comedy. It's still that. But I was like, okay, how are they going to keep up this formula? Because it's just the same formula in like every chapter or episode where it's just kind of a competition. And they do loop in other characters, so it's not just those two doing competitions. There's other characters involved too. But I was like, how are they going to keep this formula up? They're going to have to do something. Because then it would get
like stale.
Right. And a few like into the first season and I think like for second or so volume, they introduced other members of the student council. One of them being Yu Ishigami, who's the treasurer. He's a freshman. Kaguya and Shinomiya, the two main characters, are sophomores, so that they're second years, right? Because remember, high school in Japan is 3 years. And he initially just is this character that's really withdrawn. He likes playing video games, everything like that, and he is kind of terrified of Kaguya because he's intimidated by her, and and everything she does he assumes is like an attack on him, and he's like afraid of her. But then you start learning more about him as the series goes on, and you start seeing that there's characters that, like, there's a part where he is not doing well in school. It's not that he's not smart, it's just he's fucking lazy. He spends way too much time playing video games where he doesn't study.
Oh, sounds like you.
Okay. And because of that, they basically tell him if you do not do well on your exams, you will have to repeat your freshman year.
Oh, that would suck.
So Kaguya basically tells him, hey, no, I'm going to help you study. You're not going to repeat this year. And he initially is just like, what is your intention behind this? I don't trust you. And
like her ulterior motive.
Yeah, what is your motive for this? What are you trying to get out of this? And she's like, no, I don't have a motive. I'm just trying to help you. And he doesn't get it initially. But as she starts teaching him more, he becomes a little more comfortable. And then they're studying in like the library or something. And there's these girls that basically say like to Kaguya, they walk up to her and like, you sure you want to spend time with him? Like, and she's like, what do you mean? Like, well, he basically got suspended from middle school, a few years ago, and he only just came back. He was only just allowed to come back to like the high school level, because he was still like doing tests and stuff like that from home, but he wasn't allowed to come into school. And she was basically just like, I'm Kaguya. If I say I can associate with somebody, I can associate with somebody, and they just like back the fuck off. And so like initially I was like, okay, this is weird, but I didn't think about it again. But later on in the story, they start digging into that, and you find that there's like everybody basically treats this kid like shit, and you're like, why? What is wrong with this guy? Like, and you find out that there's this sports festival arc. Every fucking anime or something has like a sports festival arc, but it's basically like, think of like a relay, like it's like a multi thing, like a field day where like everybody does like different events. And Ishigami decides to join the track team, which is completely different than something he would do, but he decides to do it because he's like, I want to do something that I would not normally do to put myself out there, to kind of change my perspective on things.
Didn't you say he joined cheerleading too?
Oh, no, sorry. It was cheerleading, not track. It was he decided to join the cheerleading squad because he was like, that's not something I would do, but whatever, I'll do it anyway. And initially people like dismiss him and everything like that, and he's doing the field day basically, and they have him doing an event that's like a relay race where he's like the last leg on the race. And as they're doing the race, they hand it off to him, the baton, and he starts taking off, and basically everyone's like bad mouthing him while he's like running. And one of the reasons they want him to do the race is because back in middle school he ran track and field, so he has some skills with that. Mm-hmm. But while they're doing this race, they flash back to what happened, like why he got suspended. And I'm gonna leave a little spoiler here, but I'm going to go into details with you because you're not going to read it. But it's kind of, I want to talk about it because it's pretty interesting. So what you find is that he got suspended because back then he was still kind of weird and kept to himself, but he wasn't as weird as he is now. Mm-hmm. And there was this girl that he liked, but she had a boyfriend and everything like that, and she was like really nice to him, but he just like kept to himself. He didn't like decide to rock the boat or anything like that. And then he ends up overhearing her boyfriend basically saying that, that he is cheating on her with like other people. And so he gets angry and like basically is going to tell the girl, and the dude's basically just like, don't fuck with me or something like that. Anyway, there's like a whole thing that escalates, and eventually the dude, Ishigami, gets into a fight with the kid and ends up like hitting him, and the girl walks in at that point and sees it. And her boyfriend kind of maneuvers it to make it seem like Ishigami just assaulted him for no reason. So, and the girl basically just says like to Ishigami that she thinks he's scum, and he ends up getting suspended for it because nobody believes his story.
Wow. Because
the kid, the boyfriend is like pretty, I think like his family's connected to the school or something like that. And so Ishigami is told that in order for him to his suspension to end, he has to apologize to the boy, and then he can come back to school. And Ishigami just is like, fuck you, I'm not doing that. So for the next like year, he is being told constantly, you can't come back to school until you apologize to that kid. And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. And finally, there's like this giant effort that you find out is going on behind the scenes where Kaguya, Shinomiya, and like this other girl from the disciplinary committee basically rally behind Ishigami. He doesn't even know, to get him to come back to school. And then Shinomiya visits Ishigami to tell him like, hey, like we want you to come back. And Ishigami's initially dismissive, and he says like, well, if I go back and I see those people, like what are they gonna say? And Shinomiya writes on a piece of paper, this is what you'll say to them. It's basically just like, eat shit. and so then it flashes back to them doing the relay race, and people are like yelling at him and shit like that, and are like saying like he's not doing great, and he ends up just missing winning the race, right? But instead of his team just like telling him he did a shit job, they tell him like, no dude, like it's not a big deal, like you did your best, that's all that matters. And so like it's kind of like, you're like, wow, that's what he deserves. And then you find out that the girl is in the stands. The girl who told him, and she basically like, because she's going to visit her friends. Mm-hmm. And she comes up to him, and she essentially just badmouths him to his face. And you know what he says? Eat shit. I was like, it was such a great arc. I was like, so if you're coming back now, it was such a, that was the point of the series that kind of turned it from just like a romantic comedy to something a little more, had more substance to it, you know? And from then on, it just gets better. There's more and more stuff going on between multiple characters. And there are moments where it's like that, where it starts going like a little dark for a little bit, because obviously high school isn't just fucking rainbows and shit like that. There's shit going on with different people. So talked a lot about Kaguya-sama. I know that I'm going to eventually watch it with you at some point. I don't think it's something that's going to be like I'm going to give you in this format, because I feel like you're going to like it, because it is a comedy. It's very funny. Yeah. So I feel like it's just something that we're going to talk about. Similar to like
just watch together, like Hunter x Hunter.
Right. On that note, what do you have to talk about?
So right now, I just finished school. Most of you guys know that I am a kindergarten teacher, and we literally just finished school, not this past week, the week before. So I have a lot more time on my hands now than I normally do. So that's going to be a little bit interesting for me to try to kind of take up some more of my time. But outside of that, so right now on TV, I'm currently watching The Bold Type, which I have talked about before, where it explores a lot more, I guess, controversial topics that need to be explored on television, which is awesome to see. We come back, and the main character, she just got back from having she had her double mastectomies.
Right.
I couldn't think of the word. She just got back from having double mastectomies, so she's going through that and everything, and then her best friend gets fired from her job, and her other best friend finds out that she's pregnant, and there's just like a whole bunch of stuff that's going on. So I'm interested to see how that is going to kind of roll out. It's only been like 1 or 2 episodes since it's come back for this particular part of the season, so there hasn't been a whole lot that's happened yet. Outside of that, I have been also watching America's Best Dance Crew and America's Got Talent. So America's Best Dance Crew has been pre-recorded, apparently, that I didn't know. And so that's okay to continue to obviously watch and see. America's Got Talent, I don't know how they're going to continue showing this once it gets to, I guess, episodes that weren't already pre-recorded. Because I know when I watched the first episode, it gave the caveat that said that, oh, this was recorded 2 weeks before basically the whole entire world shut down. So I don't know what's going to happen in like another couple of weeks. I guess we'll see. I have no idea. They might do something how like American Idol did when they were finishing out their season. They were doing it like at home.
How does that work?
I don't fucking know. I have not a clue. So those are 2 of the things that I've been watching. I've also trying to do a little bit more reading. I usually read more like romance novels, and I am in the middle of a series right now by the author Anna Todd, and the series is called After, and it follows 2 people that are basically polar opposites for each other, and they're so totally not the right type for the other person, and it's just like kind of almost like a toxic relationship to a certain extent. So it kind of explores their relationship, and I also just found out that the first book in the series was made into a movie called After on Netflix, and I watched it today, and it was absolute trash. Like, so the first book in the series is probably about like 600 pages.
Well, that's surprising.
It's a really long movie. So they crammed 600 pages into an hour and a half, and they changed so many things in it. It is very, very loosely.
Was it a Netflix
based.
Original movie?
No.
Okay.
It was actually in the movie theater.
When?
I think when I looked it up, it said like 2019. So it's a fairly new movie. They're also making the second movie for the second book, which I just finished reading today. And I have the other books. They're coming tomorrow in Amazon, so I can finish the rest of the series. I think there's 3 more books.
Cool.
But yeah, outside of that, that's pretty much it. I also have another book to read this summer for school about racism in our world, which we kind of talked a little bit on to begin with. So I'm interested to kind of delve into that because we're trying to do a lot of things in our school to kind of implement change for the better, especially in the population that I teach in. I teach in an urban education setting. So we're trying to kind of get out in front of it and kind of partner with our families and our students in our school to try to make a change for the better. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
And then we're still watching Hunter x Hunter. I have we're almost done the Chimera.
No, you're not.
Oh, I'm not?
No, you're not even remotely done the Chimerian arc.
Oh, shit. I feel like I'm...
No, you just started.
Oh, my God. I feel like I'm almost done with the Chimera arc. We just got to the point where... I guess I won't say it.
Yeah, don't say it.
But we just got to the point where they're kind of like going into the whole Chimera Ant's, I guess, den or nest or whatever.
Yeah, the Royal Guard, the first Royal Guard woke up, and shit happened. Let's just say that. But you are not even remotely done.
This is a long arc?
This is the longest arc in the series. But there's a lot that happens in this arc.
Oh.
So... yeah.
Okay, so I'm not done yet.
No.
I thought I was getting close because I was like, oh, we're getting to the den or the nest or whatever it is. And I was like, oh, there can't be that many more episodes.
No, you have so much more to go.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever. So I guess I'm interested to see what else happens then.
Yeah.
Considering I thought I was almost done.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay. So we're going to move into the main event then. Okay, so it's been 10 episodes now, so I'm going to be really brief on the rules for this, just in case you're new and this is your first episode. So the way this works is we both pitch each other a movie or a TV show, and then we watch it separately because we usually do that anyway, and we take notes, we record scores at the end based on those notes, into 5 separate categories. And those categories are?
Story, characters, direction, and cinematography, overall enjoyment, and music.
Yep. And we rate each category in a score of 1 to 5. And at the end, we total it up. And then whoever has the highest score at the end of the episode is the winner of that episode. Now, I'm pretty sure I'm still in the lead.
I think you're leading by like 1 point.
Yeah. We did have 1 tie.
I got that point.
No, that's a tie.
No.
So this time, I gave Ashley a movie and she gave me one. And the movie I gave Ashley is Tokyo Godfathers.
So, Tokyo Godfathers, it came out in 2013. Sorry, I had word vomit. It came out in 2003, and it's kind of like a holiday movie, I would say, almost. It takes place around Christmas time.
Yeah.
And it's a comedy drama film directed by Satoshi Kon. Kon.
Now, before we go further, you probably don't know this, but you've actually seen a movie directed by Satoshi Kon before.
Really? Was it?
Perfect Blue.
I don't remember what happened in that movie.
Yes, you do. That was the movie with the actress.
Oh.
Yeah.
That movie was better than this one.
Okay, well, that's not a good start. So let's... All right, let's go into it.
And this movie is kind of loosely based off of a novel called The Three Godfathers. So just to give you a quick synopsis of the story before I get into the actual details, I said that it kind of takes place around Christmas time, and so it follows 3 people that are homeless, and those 3 people are Jin, Hana, and Miyoki. They are all homeless for various different reasons, and they basically come into contact with each other, and they form like a close-knit family. So they are in a church nativity scene, and they essentially go to, I guess, the soup kitchen to have dinner or whatever it might be for Christmas time. And in doing so, they go to an area where Hana was saying that she had found something for Miyoki to give her for Christmas, and when she went back to go find it, it was no longer there. But in her looking for that, they come across a baby that was abandoned in that area. And they, from that point on, they're on this hunt to find where this baby came from. And that is the premise of the story. Now, to get into a little bit more detail about the story, give me 1 second, I'm going to switch back. So, initially, I was just to give you guys a little bit of background for the characters. Number one, I didn't realize, so when you gave me this movie, it didn't click with me for I don't want to say that because it's going to spoil the ending. But anyway, so one of the characters, Hana, that's a guy, correct?
It's transgender woman.
Okay. So
yeah,
I was thrown off at first, and it kept on like throwing me off, and I just was like, I needed to know that answer. That's what I figured. But so anyway, moving on from that, so once they find the baby, Hana really wants to keep the baby, although Jin essentially tells her, like, no, we need to take it to the police office in case the parents are looking for them, in case they decided that they didn't want to abandon the baby. Hana tells them that she wants to keep this baby so that she can live out her dream of being a mother.
Yeah.
So she brings the baby back to where they're living, and they send Miyoki out to get water so that they can make milk. And kind of while they're out, Hana and Jin, they kind of start talking about Jin's backstory. So the one thing about this movie that I realize is that there's a lot of backstories and a lot of side stories. And it kept on like bringing me in circles. Like they were all relevant in a sense, but it got confusing at one point, and I literally had to stop the movie and like think about what I was actually watching. So that's just a tidbit, and I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. So Jin's backstory is essentially he's homeless, and his first backstory, he said that he is homeless because he did have a little girl when he was younger, and his wife, the little girl that he had, got sick and ended up passing away, and his wife soon passed away after her. So he kind of connects to the fact that this baby is kind of abandoned, and he kind of wants to be that fatherly figure, even though he does still want to bring it to the police. Yeah. The police station. So Hana basically agrees with them and says that, okay, well, I would rather go and track down the family to look them in the eye and essentially ask them, why did you give up this baby girl? So they want to understand why they left her out there. And for them to kind of start, when they found the baby girl, they found a key that was in, I guess, her bassinet or whatever you would call it. And they used this key to track down their essential first clue into looking for where these two people were that gave birth to this child. So they go and they track this down, and they find in this locker that there's pictures of this couple and just a whole bunch of like random stuff, where it kind of felt like they just kind of picked up and left the house on a whim and then just like left their baby somewhere. So they take the pictures, and in the background they see like different buildings and whatnot. So they're trying to pinpoint exactly where they are living. So they get on a train, they go, and they try to track down and get to the area where they need to go. While on the train, you see a little bit of the backstory behind Miyoki. And while the train is stuck, she's looking out the window and she sees another person in the car next to her. I automatically knew that it was her father.
Yeah, it's obvious.
It's pretty obvious. Although you don't know why she is homeless at that point. So she kind of freaks out and she climbs out the window, and Jin and Hana and the baby all follow suit with her. While they're walking in the snow, getting to where they need to get to, they meet a man that's got stuck under his car, because at this point, like we said, it's during Christmas time, and I'm assuming, obviously, and they're in Tokyo. It's snowing during this time, and the guy, he got out to try to push his car because it got stuck, and in the process of trying to move his car, the car like rolls over him. I don't know, it was some like ridiculous type of thing. It was just a really weird part. So once they get this guy out, you can clearly tell that the person that they helped out, he has power, whatever it might be. He's a part of some powerful family. It almost reminds me of like the Yakuza or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think from what I remember, he's like a like some congressman or whatever I forget what the parliament thing is in Japan.
So he tells them, or they show him the picture of the two parents the two people that they think are the baby's parents. And they also show them this business card that they found in the locker, and they asked him if he knows the establishment, and he's like, well, funny you asked that, because my daughter's actually marrying the person that owns this establishment. So he takes them along with them and brings them to his daughter's wedding, and so that way they can get the information from the guy that she is marrying. So while he's on the phone with whoever it is, saying that this is who they're looking for, because he knows exactly who the woman is in the picture, there's somebody there that's trying to kill the guy that almost got ran over by a car. And in the process of her him, we think was a guy, or you think was a girl, in the process of her trying to kill him, the other guy that they were essentially getting the information from jumps in front of the bullet and basically saves the guy's life. But obviously, because he just got shot, he can't give him the information that they're looking for. So at this point in the story, I was like, okay, well, this is going to be the type of story where shit just keeps on happening and happening and happening until we finally get to the end. So the person that tried to shoot them takes Miyuki and the baby as a hostage, puts them in a taxi, and drives away. And Jin and Hana race out of the building to go and find them. So it's at this point in the movie, and I think this part, I took note of it. It was about like the 30 to 35 minute mark. This is where I started to kind of get my stories kind of crossed, because there was essentially 3 side stories going on for each of the different main characters. So there was a side story happening for Jin, there was a side story happening for Hana, and then there was a side story happening with Miyuki and the baby, who was the hostage of the person that was kind of going. Mm-hmm. This is probably my least favorite part of the movie, because I just felt like there was way too much going on, and I felt like they could have done it in a different way that still could have got the point of the story across. Like, I understand why they did it, because they wanted to show the backstory and the growth of the different characters, but I was not a fan. So kind of a little bit of tidbit on the characters at that point. So at this point where all the characters, they kind of split up, Jin comes across an old man in the street that's clearly dying. He sees himself in him while he's bringing him back to where he lives, and this is where he finds a picture that he recognizes in the background of the picture that they found in the locker with the man and the woman that they think is the baby's parents. So he kind of rips it out. Then you kind of flash over to where Miyuki and the baby were. The guy who took them hostage, he just like disappears. I don't know where the fuck he went. He was like never seen again in the movie whatsoever. But he brings them to his house because he knows that the baby's hungry, and he brings them home to his wife, who was basically breastfeeding the other child, which was another weird scene.
I thought that was his mom.
No, because she said husband.
Oh. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've
doesn't
seen
really
it.
matter. But at this point, you find out why Miyoki is homeless. She's homeless by choice because she ran away from her father, which you find out that she stabbed her father.
Yep.
Which was awesome. And then Hana, she kind of has another side, not really a side story, but you follow her character as she's tracking down the baby and Miyoki, and she does eventually find them, and when they do find them, they kind of go back to where they thought they left Jin, and he's not there. And while they're looking for him in the streets, they come across a couple of people and an ambulance going to a scene of a crime, where people were saying that a homeless person had died, and they automatically thought it was Jin, so they race over. It was clearly not Jin, because they were not going to kill him off right there. And it was the old guy that Jin had rescued from the middle of the street. So at that point in the story, it's only Hana and Miyoki and the baby. And they're still trying to look for Jin, but they don't want to go home because they don't want to leave him. So Hana says that she's going to go to the only place that she can think of at this point in the town, instead of going back home. And we find out that's her mother's place. And I also noticed in this storyline that there's a lot of reference to like angels. And I don't know if it's because it's just like a Christmas story or whatever it is. There was like reference to Jin when he thought he was dying. The angel from Hana's mother's person comes out and like lights her up, and she's just talking about an angel. He also mentioned angels somewhere else, and then Hana's mother's place is something with the word angel in it or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I wonder if this has anything to do with like it being a Christmas-ish movie or whatever. So that was something I noticed. And sorry, I lost my train of thought, guys. Okay, so they go into her mother's place, and she hasn't been there for forever because of something that happened in the establishment. And they basically hug, they make up, and they walk in, and they find Jin laying on the sofa because one of their dancers found him, I guess, in the snow. Mm-hmm. So from there, they bid farewell to her mom, and they continue on to find the house that the couple should, in theory, be at. When they finally get to the house, they finally find where it is. They find out that the house was burned down, and they come across some neighbors there that were still in the area, and they were asking if they knew where they were. So the neighbors, they told them that they weren't really 100% sure where they went, but they were saying how the wife was kind of like the breadwinner of the family, and the husband was kind of like the mooch. He was a drunk. He was a gambler. He didn't really treat her the way that she should be treated. And it's at this point in the story where Jin, you see, kind of relates really heavily to that story. He starts to get angry. He starts to get upset, and he takes it personally. And you start to think about like his backstory from the beginning of the story. We're like, okay, well, that's probably not his actual true story. While they're kind of going through the wreckage, Miyuki finds an ad that has a message on it from her father that says that her cat is still alive and came back home, which I don't know, like, they never really made it known. Like, did she stab him because her cat ran away?
I think that they have, like, some reference they were talking about that back when she was, like, younger. Mm-hmm. I don't think that was the reason, per se, that she stabbed him. I think it was just, like...
Like the straw? Like the breaking point?
I think so. It was something along those lines. Yeah.
I don't know. But I was just like, okay. So once the couple, once they kind of get all the information that they can, they go to a store because they don't really know where else to go. And while they're sitting in this store, a person comes into the store and is calling them homeless and that they smell bad, and they get into a fight with this homeless drunk, or this other drunk person who came into the store. So the owner of the store drags them out, and in the process of them dragging them out, they are getting into a fight on the sidewalk, and an ambulance drives directly into the store building. And it's at this point where the couple keeps on saying, like, oh, the baby, it has, like, some miracle, like, wherever the baby is like, she's a lucky charm, or whatever. I forget what the exact words they said were. But they also say that, and this is also kind of where the angel theme comes in, because they do reference the baby as an angel. And at this point, Miyoki kind of comes back over because she was calling home after she found the ad, but she doesn't say anything to her father. So after the ambulance drives through the building, Hana passes out, and this is also where we're also shown blood for the second time, so it makes you think like Hana is sick, but they don't really address it after that. She's taken to the hospital, and while there, they run into a nurse who happens to be Jin's daughter. So I'm just like, I'm like, this is just coincidences that in real life would never, ever in 1,000,000 years happen. So once he runs into his daughter, you find out the real story about Jin, how he was an angry drunk, and he was gambling, and he racked up all this debt, and he had all this debt. So because he had all the debt, he decided to leave home and leave his daughter and his wife, because he didn't think that he was worthy of them, and he considered himself trash. And we also find that the guy that was shot previously, when he was trying to block the bullet from the other guy, he did end up living. But that is the guy who he owes a lot of money to. So Hana gets pissed off at him when she realizes that he lied to her and lied to Miyuki, and she storms off. And so she brings Miyuki with her because she doesn't want to leave Miyuki with Jin. And while they're walking, this is where the story gets fucking weird. While they're walking, they see this lady that's trying to jump off a bridge. So they stop this lady from jumping off of the bridge, and the lady that is jumping off the bridge just happens to be the lady that is in the picture. I was like, this is ridiculous. So they basically were like, oh, well, we're so glad that we caught you before you jumped off the bridge, yada, yada, yada. Long story short, they ended up giving the baby over to the lady that was going to jump off the bridge because of the fact that she was in the picture, and that's who they had believed that was the mother of the child. She feeds them some sob story that says her husband was the one that took the baby away and abandoned them because she couldn't protect them. And then in the meantime, while this is all happening, Jin is going to the address that they found previously. And when they got there, there was a guy there, which was the husband of the crazy lady that was trying to jump off the bridge. He tells Jin that no, it's not her baby. Like, she took the baby from the hospital and decided to abandon it for whatever fucking reason. I don't know. And so at this point you're like, okay, so this lady is fucking crazy. So Jin realizes this. He goes to look for Hana and goes to look for Miyuki and lets them in on it. So they're looking around town trying to find the baby and the crazy lady to try to get the baby back, so that way they can actually bring the baby to where they needs to be.
Hey, this is Mike. Just adding this in because Ashley forgot to include the fact that
there was a spoiler on Tokyo Godfathers. So at this point, if you do not want to hear the spoiler for the ending of Tokyo Godfathers, pause it and go to the timestamp that is in the bottom of the description. They end up finding her, and they chase her into a building. She runs up to the very, very top onto the roof, and she again tries to take her own life with the baby now in her arms, and she tries to jump off of the side of the building. Before she jumps off the side of the building, we come to find out that she really is not, in fact, the baby's mother, and I just realized that I should have probably said spoiler, so we'll have to go back in there, and you'll have to edit that.
Cool.
Sorry. So she is about to jump off the roof, and we find out that, like I said, that she's not the baby's mother. And we also find out that she did have a baby, but the baby died. And this was kind of like her getting to be a mother again. So she said that she was just like in a really dark place, and when she was walking around the hospital looking at all the babies, this was the only baby that stopped and smiled at her. And she thought at that moment that she was like destined to be this child's mother. So she takes the baby. So at this point, she does actually jump off the side of the building, and Miyuki grabs her and the child before they can continue falling off the side of the roof. And Hana and Jin also come into the picture at this point. And right as Jin and Hana are coming up to the side of the building, the baby falls out of the lady's arms and is basically plummeting to its death. That's the easiest way I can say it. But Hana, because she's kind of formed such a bond with this child, she jumps off of the side of the building to save this child, and she catches the baby, goes onto the side of the building, and is holding on for dear life. The railing or banister or whatever it was that she was holding on to breaks. They start tumbling down to the concrete at the bottom, and right as they were about to hit the ground, a big gust of wind came over, and the sign that she was holding onto on the banister, I guess, acted as like a parachute and just floated them safely to the ground.
Yeah.
So the baby's saved, Hana's saved, no one died. They bring them all to the hospital to check them out, and they reunite the baby with the actual parents. And the parents want to meet the 3 people that saved their child's life and to name them the Godfathers. And as they are bringing the parents into the room, the detective tells them, just so you guys know, like, these people are homeless. They're like, I don't care. Like, they saved my child's life. I want to name them Godfathers. So they bring them into the room, and the detective turns around, and it's Miyuki's father. Now, also, side note, there was also a lottery winning for like 50 million or 50 million yen or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And the number, they show the number on the screen, and right before the end, they pan to the homeless guy's, Jin's pocket. A lottery ticket falls out, and he has the winning fucking number.
You done spoilers?
Yeah, I'm done with spoilers.
Okay. So, how'd you rate this?
Okay, so let me go through the rest of the different things. That was for story. For characters, I kind of touched on a little bit about the characters in general. Hana, she seems like she can relate to the baby because she was also abandoned by her parents. And she doesn't want to give up hope on the baby. So she's kind of like the one that is the driving force with making sure the baby is kept safe and that she's loved and cared for. Jin, he's very angry. He's annoyed most of the time. He's vulgar. He has like no sense of hope whatsoever. And he considers himself trash. His character, for the large majority, stays consistently at that same point until the very end, which we kind of already talked about, so I won't talk about that again. Miyuki, she's the teen of the group, and she kind of like has this relationship with Jin where she goes like back and forth with him, and she does want to help out, and she has like other people's best interests at heart, and she's kind of like the helper of the group. So for characters, I gave them a 4. I said it seems like there's a lot of growth between the characters and that there's reflection on their actions around, like, all around the actual baby. So they do grow as characters, which was nice to see. Their story arcs kind of all get tied up nicely in a little perfect bow, I guess you would say. I would say that Hana's arc is probably the one that was least explored. you don't really see what happens or what would come of her if she actually went back to go live with her mother or whatever might happen. So she's kind of the one that's least explored. Miyuki is reunited with her father. Jin is reunited with his daughter and probably essentially his wife. He also just won, apparently, some money. So I gave that one a 4. Music, I liked the overall vibe and the feeling of the music. There was a lot of different types of genres that I noticed. There was jazz, there was pop, it was a lot of instrumental. At the end, I liked the touch for the Japanese lullaby at the very end. And it helped move the movie along for the most part. So for that, I gave it a 4 as well. For cinematography and direction, I noticed very quickly the picture and the art style of the movie. It really only gave details to the people that were kind of up front and center and the surroundings that were directly on camera. And the other that were in the background were kind of loosely detailed. I also said that there are kind of clues that keep the movie going at a particular pace and pushed it along, and you're motivated with the want to keep the baby. You're motivated, blah, blah, blah. The lady, Hana, she's the motivating force that kind of wants to keep the child and continue the story. I did make the same note here. I said, like, at the 30-minute mark, where all the characters kind of split up, was kind of where it got a little bit hectic and a little bit crazy for me. I also mentioned the thing about there was just, like, a lot of references with angels. And at the very end, I said, like, it seems like the child is deemed, like, a miracle child or something. Anything that happens to them is good because they're with her. For this one, I gave it a 3. I said, personally, there was too many things happening at one point and the whole miracle baby thing was really weird for me. I don't know. It was just like, I felt like I needed something to, like, go wrong or whatever. Like, it was just like a too perfect type of film, which I usually like those films, but this one was just kind of weird for me. I don't know. Story wise, I'll go back to, I gave it a 3. I said there's a lot of runaround between all the characters just to get the baby home. I felt like there was parts in the movie that probably could have been taken out and it still would have had the same ending. So I felt it dragging at some points, not a lot, but just the whole runaround with the whole characters was really odd to me and just kind of kept it at a pace that was just like, eh. So overall enjoyment for the various reasons that I talked about, I gave it a 3.
Okay.
And I won't tell the total. Yeah.
Okay. So real quick, this was the dub. I've never seen the dub. I still haven't seen the dub. I've only seen it subbed because it's only recently been dubbed. So I'm interested to watch the dub versus the sub. I like Tokyo Godfathers. I feel it's a more lighthearted movie compared to
it's very
some of his other works, because most of Satoshi Kon's works are not lighthearted. They're either super trippy or super like depressing, and like they're usually like psychological movies, like Perfect Blue. There's another movie he did. I think he did Paprika, which I also saw. And then he did one anime, which was Paranoia Agent. And I think he did some other... Oh, and he did Millennium Actress, too. Which, that's another movie. I don't know if I would call it lighthearted. It's more... it's a drama. But this is definitely his most lighthearted movie.
It is very lighthearted. But, like, I felt like it was so lighthearted that I was, like, waiting for someone to die or so. I don't know. Like, I just needed something to go wrong in this. It was just too perfect.
Yeah. I guess you could make that point if you're watching it standalone compared to his other works. Because for me, when I saw it, I was like, there's a lot good going on here. That's not normal for his types of movies.
Fair enough.
And yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the overall theme, though, is before this movie, before they meet the baby, it's clear that their lives are not going well. Yeah. And I think that's why they're putting this theme of like the miracle baby, because everything is going right for them with the baby. So that's like the theme of the miracle. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I got that, and that's
so they're not wrong technically. Things are going right for them, which is weird for them with the baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. All right.
So your movie.
So
I gave you Bridesmaids. Now, if you guys watched one of our other podcasts before, this was the movie that I originally thought I gave Mike on another one when we were kind of doing like a romantic comedy theme. And I think I give you 27 Dresses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The movie's not great.
No, it wasn't. I agree with you. That was when we did the Sonic episode.
Yeah, that was fun.
So this is the movie that I originally gave him. This is one of my favorite movies. So what did you think of it?
So just some background. I, until this point, had never seen this movie. I'd seen like clips of it when it was on like TV, but I'd never seen the full movie. So I didn't like have context. This movie came out in 2011. It's directed by Paul, I think his name's pronounced Feig. Produced by Judd Apatow. And the writers of it are Annie Mamoto and Kristen Wiig, who Kristen Wiig is the main actress as well of this movie. Yeah. And when this movie came out, I had heard that it was compared to The Hangover. And I can kind of see that, but not really. Like, I get what they're saying in terms of the fact that it's a similar setting where it's just a bunch of misadventures with characters. But I feel like that's missing the point of this movie. And I'm going to dive into that in a moment. But yeah, I would say don't really compare this to The Hangover. It definitely is a comedy, and it definitely involves like shenanigans of like people involved with the wedding. But it's a lot more than that. So
I actually would not have.
There's plenty of people that compared it to, like, they basically were saying it was the female Hangover.
Female version.
And I was like,
I can see that, like how you said, in certain aspects of it, but I would say at least 85% of the movie I would not compare to The Hangover whatsoever.
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna dive into it. So when the movie starts, you're introduced to the main character, Annie, who is played by Kristen Wiig, and she is, let me just pull up the notes real quick. I just had it. And it's pretty clear that she's kind of not living the life that she wants. She used to own a bakery shop that she opened during the recession, which was like around 2008 to like 2012 or something like that. And because of that, it ended up closing down. She now works at a jewelry store, and she is not really happy with her life. She has a best friend who is played by Maya Rudolph. Her name is Lillian, and her best friend, they're close, but it seems like they really haven't seen each other too much recently. And part of the reason for that is because they Maya Rudolph, aka Lillian, is in a relationship with a guy. She initially doesn't think that it's going to amount to anything. She's like nervous. She has like some that's how they end up meeting up again, is they go out to lunch and everything like that, and Lillian is kind of like worried because she feels like her boyfriend's acting odd recently, and she's afraid like he's gonna leave her. And then later on that night, Annie goes to visit Lillian for, I guess, like a girls' night, and Lillian shows her a ring saying that her boyfriend was acting weird because he was trying to find the right time to propose. So you see that on Annie's like face that she is both happy and also like afraid, because she doesn't want to be left behind. Lillian is like her best friend, and she doesn't really have anybody else, and she is essentially going to like do something that she has not been able to do, like find somebody, like, you know, move on with her life, because basically Annie feels like she's just stuck in like a rut. So then Lillian asks Annie to be her maid of honor and to help coordinate her wedding. Annie says yes, and then you, as the movie goes on, you are introduced to the rest of the bridesmaids, and they're all characters. So there's Rose Byrne. Well, let me actually go back to her in a moment. So I'll start with Ellie Kemper, who plays Becca. She's the one in the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt show, who I don't know if she's Christian, but she feels like the Christian girl, like who just has only had one boyfriend ever and waited till marriage to have sex, you know, because at one point, and I'll get into this, like she describes that they only have sex at night with the lights off under the sheets. Yeah. There's like, she like lists like all these things, like, and I think she said like he keeps his socks on or something like that.
Something like that.
And so she basically has only had like one relationship with one dude. And then you have Wendy McLendon Covey, who plays Rita, which I believe is Lillian's cousin.
Is she the stuck-up bitch?
No, I'm gonna get to her in a moment.
Oh.
She's the blonde girl.
Oh yeah.
And she's like the house. She's like the, I don't know what she does for a living, but she's like a mom, and she has like a couple of kids who are, I think, like 11 or something like that, boys. And she's basically like this woman who's like been through some shit, and she's just like, I'm the jaded mom, you know, I need some fucking fun. And then you have Melissa McCarthy, who is Megan Price.
Fucking love
who
her.
is, yeah, she's probably my favorite character, but I'll go into that bit. And she's the sister of Lillian's fiance. And Melissa McCarthy is just this really crazy woman. Like, she's just really like out there in terms of her personality. And then lastly, you have Rose Byrne, who plays Helen Harris, who is she's like a newer friend of Lillian's, who her fiance is like, her fiance's boss is Helen's husband, and they're kind of close because of that. And it's very clear that Helen comes from money. She's very stuck up. She's very like into herself. And it's very clear from the very beginning that Helen and Annie are not going to get along, right? Like they're...
Nope.
Because essentially they both are kind of jealous of each other. Annie is jealous of Helen because she feels that her relationship with Lillian is too close too soon. She feels like she's essentially stealing her spot. And Helen is jealous of Annie because she's essentially like the kid best friend, the one who she's been her friend for years. Mm-hmm. And so she's afraid that that her entering the picture is going to ruin what she just started with Lillian. So they're both like really jealous. Now, I want to make a note that I watched the extended movie version of this movie because I could not find the regular version. So there's like scenes in this I don't know if they actually were in the original movie or not that I'm going to reference. Because this movie was like over 2 hours. Like when I watched this, I was...
think I saw the extended version.
This was over 2 hours. So I'm going to make a note of saying that like there were scenes in this where I was like, I feel like this was in the extended version only. Because I was like watching parts and I actually had to pause some of it a little bit because I was just be like, okay, come on. Like move on. And I'll get to that in a moment. Anyway, so they're at they're meeting up because it's I guess the engagement party or something like that, and they have Annie give the toast to, you know, Lillian for everything, and Annie gives the toast and she tries to make it simple, and then Helen gets up and basically does this whole fucking thing of like, you know, just this whole outlandish thing, and she starts like speaking French and stuff like that. And so Annie's like, well, I don't want to be showed up, so she gets back up, and they just have this whole back and forth. Now in the original version, I don't know how long this scene was, but in what I watched, this was like 10 minutes of them going back and forth.
Oh, it was not.
Eventually they start singing to, like, both of each other start singing a song.
I don't remember that. Okay,
because it was getting really cringy. I was like, oh my god, this is so awkward. So yeah, they have this whole thing, and eventually they end up like, you know, it ends, and then the movie continues. So after that point, there's, okay, hold on a sec. Sorry, I'm just leaving where I'm at. There's one part that I wanted to mention was Lillian's dad. Lillian's dad gives this speech, basically, of just like how he doesn't agree with the wedding, and it's pretty funny. He's basically just like, you know, like, I don't think people should get married. I think you should all just leave. And everyone just laughs, and he's like, no, I'm serious. I think you should all just leave. And they all just laugh, and he's like, I'm not joking. And they just
Go
keep
home.
like, go home. Yeah, it's pretty weird. Anyway, so then Annie is driving home or something, and she gets pulled over by a cop. And the cop here is Chris O'Dowd, who, his name is Nathan in the movie. I've seen him before because he's in the IT crowd.
Mm-hmm.
So he pulls her over because she had
tail light out.
Yeah, she had tail light out, but she doesn't know. Like, she thought she was getting pulled over for being drunk. She was like swerving and shit like that, just because she's fucking, I don't know, she's weird. And eventually she talks to him because he's about to give her a ticket, and she tells him that, you know, she had a bakery, and he was like, oh, I love that bakery. And she's like, yeah, you know, I had like things that aren't really going out. He's like, oh, okay. He's just like, yeah, you know, back, you know, with my boyfriend. He's like, oh, boyfriend. And he just starts to continue writing the ticket. And she's like, no, we're not together anymore. He's like, oh. She's like, and he goes, well, how's that bakery going? And she's like, it's gone. I had to shut it down. He's like, oh. And then he like rips up the ticket, and he's like, no, never mind, forget it. He's just like, lets her go. Which
Your life is already shit.
And he tells her to like go fix up like her car or whatever, and he gives her, and I made a note of this too because of the timing. He gives her like a
citation.
No. He gives her a business card for like a body shop that he thinks will fix it for her. The dude's name is Bill Cosby, with a Z, right? Now this movie came out in 2011. Bill Cosby's shit was like in like 2014, 2015. Mm-hmm. So I was like, man, that joke did not age well. Oh boy. But it was weird because they're like, oh, Bill Cosby, and he's like, oh, okay, and he's like, no, it's not that Bill Cosby. And initially I was like, I forgot what year this movie came out, because he was like, just the owner doesn't like people, like he doesn't like that, just his name, it's Cosby. Initially I was like, oh, okay, they're making the joke because I was like, no, this happened before Bill Cosby, like the whole trials. And I was like, huh, interesting. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, and yeah, so like in the meantime, they're trying to coordinate because Annie is trying to plan their bachelorette party, and she is not. So let me rewind a little bit. Doesn't really have a lot of money. She's, as I said, she's working at a jewelry store, and she is like just kind of stuck in a rut. And so because she doesn't have a lot of money, she can't do like a huge bachelorette party that's going to cost a lot of money. Now, Helen doesn't give a shit. She's basically just like,
she's,
you know,
like shitting $100 bills.
Exactly. And so initially Annie just wants to go to this like lake house where, like, when they were kids, to like kind of just, you know, because that's where for her and Lillian, where they were kids, it would be something fun to do, and it's cheap. And basically everyone's just like, fuck no, we're going to Vegas. And so like, wait, did I skip a part? Yes, I skipped a part. Sorry, forget the Vegas part yet. I skipped one of my favorite scenes, which is the dress scene where they go to try on dresses, bridesmaid dresses.
Oh, the bridesmaid dresses.
Yes. So basically they're going to try it on bridesmaid dresses. So they go to this like really like what's the word, like snooty, like freaking fancy bride, expensive place that you need reservations like year in advance. And initially they just go because they don't have a reservation and they're not going to get in. But then Helen's just like, oh, you know, I'm friends with this person, so then they let her in. And beforehand they're like they go and eat food at this like I think it's like this Hispanic place or something.
It's one of those restaurants that you go to and they bring all the meat around.
Yeah.
And they take off the.
Yeah, I think it's like Brazilian or something like that.
It's like a Brazilian steakhouse.
Yeah. And it's in like this area that they consider like that's not a great area or something like that, because like Helen's like, ugh, we're going there. And so they go there first for food, and then they go try on dresses. And when they're in there, Helen points out like this one dress, and she's like, "Oh, we should get this one." They're like, and Annie goes to look at it, and she's like, "This is like $800. I can't afford this." And so she goes to this like the cheapest dress. It's like $180, and she's like, "Oh, how about this one?" So they're all trying to try on dresses, and Helen's basically just like, "We're gonna get this one." And as it's happening, you're starting to notice all the girls are like sweating, like profusely, and they're all just like, I'm watching this, I'm like, what the fuck is going? Why are they all like sweating? And they're all like, "Oh, it's really hot in here. Oh my god, it's so hot." And then you start.
Mind you, Lillian was also trying on dresses as well.
Yeah, Lillian. Yeah, she was. She put on not the exact dress, but a similar dress to her wedding dress, because they wanted to compare like what she was going to look like compared to the bridesmaids.
Yes.
And and so they have all their dresses on and everything like that, and you start hearing like Melissa McCarthy's like stomach is just like, and she's just like, "Oh my god, I think I have to shit," and all the other girls are like looking at her, and then they're just like, "Oh my god." And slowly they all start like running off to like bathrooms, and the woman who owns like the friggin' boutique is like, "Don't shit in the bathroom, go outside." And so they all like run into different areas. They were
also like shitting in the sink.
Yeah, so like one of them, the what's her face, the Rita, the blonde haired girl, runs to the toilet. Melissa McCarthy hops up on the fucking sink and starts shitting. Becca, aka like girl from Kimmy Schmidt, runs over and pukes on the other girl's head. And Helen's fine because she didn't actually eat any of the meat. She ate just like lettuce and stuff. And she's looking at like Annie, and Annie's like sweating really bad. And Helen's like, "You sure you're good?" Like she knows she's not. She's basically just being like a bitch. She's just like, "You sure you're good?" And Annie's like, "Yeah, I'm fine. In fact, I'm hungry." And so she starts trying to like eat stuff, and she just looks so bad. And it's clear to all of them like they got food poisoning, but Annie's like trying to deny it. And then like Lillian just like runs up and is just like, "I think we got food poisoning. I have to shit." And so she like runs outside to the street and slowly starts like going down like on an escalator and just like hovers like in the street and just shits. Still wearing the wedding dress in the street. And just like the woman who owns the place just runs out and she's just freaking the fuck out. And so they decide to buy the most expensive dresses and they leave. And on the way home, Annie's driving with Lillian, and she still looks like shit, like Annie. And she just stops the car, gets out, and throws up. So, yeah, that was a great scene. Back to the the Vegas. Yeah, so they all decide to go to Vegas. And partly one of the reasons why Annie doesn't want to go is because she has anxiety on flying. She doesn't like it, so she gets really paranoid. So they get on, all the other girls like are in first class. She's not because she can't afford it. So she's like just sitting next to this girl, this woman, who as soon as she sits down next to her, she's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm really nervous about flying. I think, once I get through it, that'll be okay." And the woman's basically just like, "I had a dream that the plane was gonna go down, and you were in it. You were in my dream," and which just not help the situation. So all the Lillian is kind of like cognizant of the fact that her friend is like anxious, and so she's kind of upset that she's not with her. And Helen's just like, no, we're good. This is for you. This is your day. And then meanwhile, like a couple seats back, there's Becca and Rita who are talking to each other, and Rita's basically just like shocked that Becca has only ever been with one dude before. And so she's kind of just like, they go into like her whole like sexual life of how it's like not sustaining her. And then like Becca's just like, "Well, you're not having sex then?" And Rita's like, "No, I am all the time. I don't want to have sex. Sometimes I just want to fucking watch TV," or something like that. And meanwhile, Melissa McCarthy is chatting with this dude who, by the way, if you don't know, that's her husband in real life.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
He makes a cameo in every one of the movies that she's in.
She's chatting with this dude who she is convinced is an air marshal. And he's like, "No, I'm not." And she's like, "Nah, it's okay, dude. Like, it's fine. I protect and serve." And he's like, "I'm not an air marshal." She's like, "Okay, well, He's like, "I'm going to take a nap."
I love her. I can't.
He's like, "I'm going to take a nap." And she's like, "Okay, I'll get the first watch." She's like, "You don't need to have the first watch. There's no need for a watch. It's fine." And she's just like, "I'll take the first must watch. Yeah, so there's like this kind of back and forth with all of them. Annie's freaking out, and she eventually like comes up to the first class to talk with Lillian, and Helen gives her some pills, which I'm assuming, I don't know what they are. I don't think it's for anxiety. It's for something. She gives her some pills and tells her to take that. They don't seem to work, so she gives her scotch. That seems to work because obviously it's alcohol, and alcohol reacts with chemicals, so yeah, it's gonna fuck you up. So she's friggin' loopy as shit. She's like running around, and like everyone's like basically just like trying to stop her. Meanwhile, Melissa McCarthy's like super like convinced this dude is a friggin' like air marshal. Like he goes into the bathroom and comes out, and she's just like trying to fuck him, and he's like, no, I'm good. She's like, well, and she goes to like go into the bathroom. She's like, I'll be waiting for you, and he's like, nah, good, thanks. So and then like there's everything basically escalates where fuck, what's her name? Kristen Wiig's name, Annie. Like it gets super loopy, and eventually like she freaks out. She runs over to like the back, and she thinks she sees somebody on the plane or something like that. So she freaks out, runs over to like the telephone to the plane, and just like basically the intercom, and basically just like yells saying like everyone's lying to them or something like that. Everyone gets freaked out. Becca and Rita start making out randomly. Yeah, it's a whole thing. And then the friggin' dude gets up and he's like, I'm an air marshal, I can and Melissa McCarthy's like, I fucking knew it. It's a good scene.
And they got kicked off.
And they got kicked off the plane in like Oklahoma or something like that. So they have to take a bus all the way back to Chicago, which is where they're from. And Lillian basically is sitting next to Annie and tells her that she doesn't want her planning the rest of her wedding anymore because she thinks she can't handle it. I skipped out on like Rebel Wilson and her brother, whoever the fuck is playing her brother, because she doesn't really play a huge role. But basically Annie lives with Rebel Wilson, I forget her name in the movie, and her brother, I guess it's her twin brother or whatever. They have a weird fucking relationship. It's really awkward. Yeah. There's like scenes where like Annie will be like in the like bathroom or something like that getting ready, and they'll both be in the tub together, like her brother, and they're like scrubbing each other, and like they're like, oh, can we borrow your razor to like Annie like shave like my sister's armpits or something? It was fucking weird. And yeah, so like things are kind of getting worse for Annie. I forgot John Hamm to mention him. John Hamm is in this movie. He plays essentially like this dude who's fucking Annie. Because like the movie basically starts with her having sex with John Hamm. Oh yeah. And I didn't mention him because I forgot about him because, well, he's a fucking asshole in this movie. He's a fucking asshole in a lot of movies. But anyway, he's essentially like this douchebag dude who just fucks Annie and then tells her to leave. Which, because there are like parts of the movie where I was like, wow, you're an asshole. Like she basically like fucks him in the beginning of the movie, and the next morning she like, she slept over, and he's essentially just like, oh man, I really want to tell you to leave, but I don't want to be mean. It's like, wow, you're an asshole. And she kind of she's really lonely, so she wants a relationship, but he doesn't want one at all. Like he's really clear on that. So there's like a couple times she'll like try and be with him, and he'll just like be a complete asshole to her. And meanwhile, like she ends up seeing the cop. Like she calls him up and she wants to like, hang out with him for a bit, which escalates into them going back to his place. They have sex. And the next morning, like he is basically just like, yeah, like I want you to stay over here or something like that. We can hang out, and I want you to like bake because that's something you did before, and I want you to like pursue that again. And she just like takes it as like an affront, which makes sense. Like in this context, she's basically like not used to dudes just like doing something nice to her, like looking out for her. She just assumes that they just want something, which is fucking sad. Like I got it. Like right away, I was like, I understood both situations for both the people. Like for him, he doesn't get that because obviously he doesn't know where she comes from in that situation. He just thinks he's trying to help, and she thinks that he is doing something because he doesn't care about her. He's just doing it to use her or something like that. So you get both scenarios. So yeah, things kind of get worse with them, and as things are falling apart with her and her friends, she ends up getting kicked out of her apartment with the two weird fucking people, like Rebel Wilson and her brother. She goes back to live with her mom. Her mom's fucking weird too. She she speaks at like this Alcoholics Anonymous place, but she's not. She's never drank alcohol. Like Annie tells her at one point, she's like, "Why do you go to those? You're not an alcoholic." And she's like, "Well, you know, I just feel with them." And she's like, "What?" It's weird.
She's like a hippie or something.
Yeah, she's interesting. And what was I gonna say? There's this scene where Annie is at the jewelry shop and this girl walks up to purchase like a friendship bracelet. And I don't know, was this in the original movie?
I don't think so.
Okay. She goes to the girl is like a teenager or something like that. She goes to purchase a friendship bracelet for her and her friends. And Annie basically says like, you know, "Are you sure you're going to be friends with her forever? Sure you want it to say best friends forever?" And the girl's like, "Yeah." And so they like have this whole
scene was in there, yeah.
They have this whole thing, and Annie basically just blows up on her and calls her a cunt. And then she gets fired because she blew up on this girl.
And she called her a cunt.
Yeah. It was, yeah. So things aren't going well with Annie. She doesn't have a job. She ends up moving back with her mom. And then they end up, she ends up going to the bridal shower and again, she's not planning that stuff anymore. Helen is. She goes to the bridal shower, and it's at Helen's place, which is a fucking huge mansion. She goes to drive up, and in between her getting to the mansion and driving, there's just a dude handing like tea, and she's just like, "I don't even have a fucking cup holder. So where do I put this?" And she gets close to the mansion, and then they're like, "Here's your horse to take you to the mansion." It's like, what the fuck? So it's completely over the top. It's like ridiculous. And they're all giving gifts to Lillian. Annie gave like this heartfelt like thing with a bunch of stuff from like when they were kids or something like that. And Helen gives tickets to Paris. Now, before this, Annie had told Helen that was like something that Lillian had always wanted to do. She always wanted to go to Paris. And that the initial idea for the bridal shower was them bringing like some kind of Paris stuff to Lillian because they couldn't go there.
Which they did.
Right, except now she gave Lillian tickets to go to Paris not with Annie, but with Helen. So basically, Annie flips the fuck out and is just like angry that Lillian is basically being like stuck up and rich, and how like everything's just over the top, and then she's basically just angry that she's like leaving her, right? So they storm. Annie storms off, and Lillian basically says, "I don't even want you to come to my wedding." And Annie's like about to leave, and on the way out, like a dude's about to hand her a puppy, and that was supposed to be like her the party favor. And basically Lillian's like, "No, she's not getting a puppy. She's not getting one." And Melissa McCarthy's like, "Oh shit, I already took like 4."
Yeah.
And I don't know if this was in the movie, but driving down the road, like Annie's driving down the road to go home, and you see like Melissa McCarthy driving in like a van with like a bunch of puppies, and she's just like waving like at her. So as I said, the relationship between her and the cop aren't great. Like she decides, she is, they're not doing good. She's kind of depressed from everything that's happened. And then Melissa McCarthy comes over because she's trying to essentially get her to wake up, right? To get her to get back on track. And she walks in, she's got 9 fucking dogs. And she's just like, they're all on my leash. And she's like, "Man, I think I took 3 too many." And then Melissa McCarthy basically tells her, like, you know, gives her like a huge pep talk, basically saying that she, as in Melissa McCarthy, despite the fact that she, you know, looks the way she does, that she had a rough childhood, she just didn't give a shit. She ended up fucking becoming like someone with high security clearance and everything like that, and just essentially tells her she needs to get her shit together. To which then Annie decides to start doing that. She decides to start like making out with people. She starts baking and stuff like that. She attempts to reconcile with the cop by like making him a carrot cake, which is a callback to when they had kind of a meet up where they were eating carrots or something like that. And it didn't look like that he ate that cake, because like she drives by multiple times and it's still there, and like there's raccoons that eat it at one point. Yeah, and then yeah, so then she I'm trying to remember. Oh, so then Helen, she's not going to go to the wedding, as in like Annie, because she feels like she can't go there, right? And Helen comes over and tells her that they can't find Lillian. It's like, I think it's the day of the wedding, right? Yeah, it's the day of the wedding. The wedding's at like night. They can't find Lillian, and she's like freaking out because nobody knows where she is. And Annie basically just blows up on her. And then Helen's just like all like, yeah, you're right. You know, like I am kind of a bitch and whatever. I just want to be friends and everything like that. So Annie decides to help her go find Lillian. So she goes to try and catch the attention of the cop to be able to have him try and help her find him. Now, he doesn't give a shit initially, but then she just does a bunch of illegal shit with her car and then eventually like taps his cop car to where he gets out and he's like, really? So then they convince him to help find her, and it turns out she's back in her own apartment. So he's just like, thanks. That was a good waste of my time. So they go back to the apartment, and Lillian basically says like she's afraid of like getting married because she's afraid of things changing, and that basically, why do I keep forgetting her fucking name? Annie. That Annie was right, that she does feel like, you know, she's leaving her behind and everything like that, and she's scared, and Annie basically says that she'll be all right, like she can, you know, she doesn't need to worry about her, she's okay, you know. So then they decide they go to the wedding. Helen, everything's kind of together, getting better with all the characters, everything like that. It kind of just wraps up in a neat bow, and on the way out, Annie sees the cop dude is ready to take her home. And he's basically like forgiven her, and he told her like, yeah, I ate the cake, it's fine. And he puts her in the back of the cop car because he's like, sorry, I can't put you in the front because that's not protocol. She's like, no, you're joking. He's like, no, get in the back of the car. So it's pretty interesting ending. So that was the story. I may have spoiled some things, but to be honest, this is like a 9-year-old movie at this point, and it's kind of predictable.
Yeah.
It's not really there's no shockers in the movie, but it is. So to finish that off, my notes in the story, it is a pretty good story. It's not overly complicated, but it's a pretty good story. So to go back, let me give my notes on everything, like all my points. Oh, I did make a note here, because there's a couple things where like so when they were at the bridal shower. Oh no, let me rewind. So was this in the movie where like Annie was trying to bond with Helen initially, kind of bond with Helen, where they were gonna play tennis?
Yeah.
Okay. Did they meet the kids there? Like her stepkids?
I don't remember.
Okay, so before they go to play tennis, and I know this is the tangent, but I needed to say this because I don't know if this is in the regular version, and I thought it was hilarious. They're talking to each other back and forth, and they're basically just like saying like shit about like how, you know, Lillian's changed but not really, and everything like that. And her stepkids come up, like Helen's stepkids, and basically Helen's basically just trying to be like, hey, you know, how are you guys doing? You guys doing good? And they're just like, they just don't give a shit about her at all. And they're about to leave, and she's like, hey, okay, well, you guys have fun. And the boy is just like, fuck off, Helen. Yeah. And it's like, oh my god. I was like, that is so good. And as they're playing tennis and Helen's getting like injured, the kid's like smiling. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So, story, I thought was good. It wasn't bad. It was a really good story. It is predictable, but it has a good flow to it. I feel like there are some points that drag, but I feel like that might be because it's the extended version. So I didn't really knock it that much. So I gave it a 4.
I wonder what the time difference is between the original.
I don't know. I could not find the original version anywhere. I just found the extended version. But still, it was still a good movie. Characters, I liked all the different girls. They all had different personalities. I think my favorite character is probably Melissa McCarthy, just because she's really out there, and like every scene she's in is like memorable. You know, she always like makes like a point to kind of say something that's pretty hilarious. My 3 favorite scenes all had her in it. It's the bridesmaid scene, the dress scene, the plane scene, and the scene where she goes to encounter Annie later on. And
to give her the pep talk.
Yeah, to give her the pep talk. And then Becca, I thought was pretty funny too. I like her. It's kind of what I expected her character to be, like this extremely pure whatever girl. Mm-hmm. But I like how she's basically just like the girl who's like, yeah, but I want to just like fuck, like with the lights on.
Yeah.
You know, like. And Rita's like, yeah, the jaded like mom. She sells that pretty well. Helen is the fucking stuck up like rich girl, who's obviously like very insecure. And then Annie's obviously goes through the most growth because she's, you know, the main character. Her life isn't going well, but it seems like when it ends that she's might turn it around. And lastly, Lillian, who's the bride, who you can tell initially is like the girl who like is slowly coming into money, and her personality starting to change because of the result of that. But towards the end of the movie, she realizes it, and you're hoping that it's not going to impact her as much. So yeah, I gave it a 5 because of that. Because I thought the characters were all really good, and even the side characters are funny. So I thought that was really good.
The Marshal. Yeah,
the Marshal's hilarious. Music. I feel like the music is just there. There's not really... There's a lot of moments in the movie where I was like, there's like no music here at all. And I was like, that's kind of interesting, because I feel like there should be. There are points... Now, when there was music, I would notice it just because there was a lot of moments in the movie where it's absent. Otherwise, the sound design's pretty good. There's not really too much, so I gave it a 3. Cinematography and direction. Like I said, there's a lot of fun scenes in this movie that are really well directed. Those 3 that I mentioned, the bridesmaid scene, all that kind of stuff. It's really well done. I couldn't really think of any issues. Like I said, there is some pacing issues. I can't tell if it's because of the extended thing. From what I see on the Wikipedia page, it says the movie has a runtime of 125 minutes, which is just over 2 hours. I feel like this could be shrunken a little bit, but I don't know, like, I don't know because I haven't seen the original version.
Yeah.
So I gave it a 4 because of that, because some of the scenes really drag to where I was like, you could have cut some of this. I'm not even saying cut out scenes. I mean like shorten them, because there's like some of them just drag on for too long.
Like the speech?
Yeah, like the speech. I was like, this is it's already cringe. You're making me just feel even more uncomfortable. And that's why I gave it a 4. And then lastly, overall enjoyment. This is a movie, as I said, that I have never seen in full. I had just seen like small clips of it. And I can totally see this being a movie that you would just watch like multiple times. If it was on TV, I'd probably watch it again. You know, it's just like one of those movies that you can easily watch with a group of friends or something like that and put it on. Preferably, probably not the extended version, just because it's a little too long. But for that reason, I gave it a 5, because in my opinion, if it's a 5, that means it's something you can watch multiple times. And I'm not going to say I'm going to get something out of it each time, but I'm still going to enjoy it. It's still probably going to be funny. So yeah. You probably won this one, but let's add up the scores.
I added mine up.
Okay.
Well, we can recap for what I gave.
So go ahead and recap your scores.
All right. So to recap, this was for Tokyo Godfathers. Story, I gave a 3. Characters was a 4. Music was a 4. Cinematography and direction was a 3. And overall enjoyment was a 3, which is a total of 17.
Okay. And then for me, for Bridesmaids, story I gave a 4. Characters a 5. Music a 3. Cinematography and direction a 4. And overall enjoyment a 5. So it's a 21. Which, I don't know if this is your highest rated one.
I think it is.
But
I think it's our highest overall.
Yeah. I don't think I've given an overall of 5 before, but for me, an overall of 5 is something that I could watch multiple times. Yeah. There aren't that many series and movies I consider that. in terms of series, it's got to be something that like I could easily rewatch.
Like Hunter x Hunter.
Like Hunter x Hunter, which was like, this is probably my 4th time watching it, even though it's 148 episodes. It's basically like something that is in like at least my top like 20 or something like that of movies or something, you know.
Mm-hmm. So
good movie.
I'm so glad that you liked it.
Yeah, it's a good movie. You did a good job this time, for once.
If you guys haven't realized by now, for me, like I'm not a big movie person. When I actually do watch movies, I usually watch them with Mike. So for me to actually find a movie that he hasn't seen is really hard.
Yeah.
So probably this summer I'll be watching a lot more movies so that I can give him more to watch.
Yeah. She tends to watch a lot more series, but a lot of the series she watches are really long.
Really long. And
have like 20 episodes a season, and they're all like 45 minutes.
Seasons.
An episode. I tend to watch a lot more anime, so it's a lot more.
It's easier to get through because they're only like 20 minutes an episode.
Yeah. So with that, we're gonna wrap up. Again, let me plug our YouTube video that we put out last time. That we tweeted out on our Twitter and on the Instagram that it's at Warren Lovecast for both of them. So you can the YouTube link you'll see there. You can also look us up on YouTube. It's Warren Love Podcast. You'll see it's the most. Well, when this comes out, it'll be the second most recent video on there. And we basically did a review of Death Note. And then other than that, we've done a couple Let's Plays for Yakuza 0. We may continue that at some point. Because we finally got a new TV in the office where we record. So we may have a chance to touch on that again, considering Ashley's now home for the next couple months. She's not going to be going anywhere.
Nope.
Yeah. And other than that, thank you guys. Lastly, if you want to follow me, I tend to post a lot of updates, not just for the podcast, but just like in general. I'm at Mr. Space Lion on both Twitter and Instagram. And Ashley doesn't have a Twitter.
Nope. And I never will.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.